I speak to you in the name of God, who is Father and Son and Holy Spirit. Amen. I love driving the Delta in October. On country roads and interstate highways, the view is just the same. Every farmer's field is covered with a thick blanket of cotton snow that stretches out to the horizon. This bounty will feed the farmer for a year and clothe consumers for a lifetime. Slowly, the cotton pickers roll. Giant rolls in bright plastic wrappers testify to a job well done. Yet for every bountiful October, there is a laborious April through September. Cotton does not simply spring forth from the earth in perfect rows with fluffy bolls. Planting, fertilizing, and tending all take the farmer's time, as does a bit of equipment maintenance, and probably a bit of prayer. Kohelet got it right. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. There is a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. Consider a similar example from St. Matthew's Gospel this morning. Jesus is walking along the dirt paths that encircle the Sea of Galilee. The reeds are blowing in the breeze, and the sun is casting colorful shadows on the rolling hills. As he walks, Jesus comes upon two sets of fishermen on a beach near Capernaum. The first set, Simon and his brother Andrew, are doing the fun part of fishing, the harvest-like part of fishing, the lucrative part of fishing. They've readied their boats, prepared their equipment, and waited for the conditions to be just right. It's go time for these two, and Jesus meets them just as they're casting their nets into the sea, just as they are about to see what the sea has in store. The second set of fishermen, James and John Zebedee, are doing the not-so-fun part of fishing. They're mending their nets. This may be a routine chore for James and John, or it may be that their nets were torn on a rock earlier in the day, or it may be that they need to squeeze just a little bit more life out of gear that should have been retired long ago. But we can say this with certainty. No one gets into farming because they enjoy repairing their equipment. And no one gets into fishing because they enjoy mending their nets. James and John are doing the part of their job that they would certainly not do if it did not need to be done. If there is a season for everything, then there must be a time to mend as well as a time to fish. But the fishing is a lot more fun. Despite their different circumstances, Jesus reaches out to both sets of fishermen with the same clarion call, the same siren song. Follow me, and I will make you fish for people. Immediately they follow. Immediately is a common word in St. Mark's Gospel, but not so much over here in Matthew. By using the word immediately, the author seeks to convey a sense of urgency in the call of Christ. The moment is not a convenient one for any of the people whom Jesus calls, but his call is compelling. Simon and Andrew walk away from the harvest. James and John abandon their broken tools and leave their father in the boat. The disciples do not tell Jesus that they will get back to him later. They do not analyze the costs and the benefits. Jesus calls, and his disciples follow. The call of Christ on each of our lives should be just that compelling. Jesus is not inclined to wait for a convenient moment or to make a request of us that comes without a cost. Jesus calls, and his disciples follow. Almost 7 years ago, if you can believe it, I came to Church of the Holy Communion because this congregation had sensed the call of Christ to go fishing for people. It was not an especially convenient time for God to call you in this way. Enthusiasm was down, and so were the numbers. But you had a sense that this congregation was incomplete. You knew deep down in your gut that there were people missing, and you felt compelled to go and find them. Many of you were here then, but more importantly, many of you were not. As we began our ministry together, we did two things simultaneously. First, like James and John in today's story, we made a plan to mend our nets, to get caught up on facilities that had been ignored for too long. And second, like Simon and Andrew, we set about casting the nets that we had. We opened our arms more widely and began proclaiming the good news more boldly. God prospered both endeavors. Our facilities speak for themselves, but so do our people. Look around the room. Are there some faces here that you don't recognize? Are there maybe some people here who have only ever known Church of the Holy Communion as a place surrounded by construction fences? Since all this work began some 19 months ago, more than 50 people have become members of Church of the Holy Communion, and dozens more have started worshiping here regularly. Over the same period, our outreach ministries have transformed themselves, now focusing on making investments of time and relationship alongside investments of money. Our formation programs are growing organically. This past year alone, a group of teenagers started their own Bible study, and a group of adults launched a parish-wide book club. If God will bless us this richly, even while we are mending our nets, just imagine what he will do when it is time for us to cast them. For everything, there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. There's a time to plant and a time to pick, a time to mend and a time to fish, a time to build and a time to do ministry in that which we have built. Church of the Holy Communion has been building for a long time, but the seasons are changing, and limitless possibilities lie ahead of us. Amidst all of this change, amidst all of this inconvenience and disruption and upheaval of planning and fundraising and of just trying to find your way into the building, the call of Christ remains the same as ever. The call of Christ is the same as it was on Galilee when Jesus turned unsuspecting fishermen into disciples. And the call of Christ is just the same as it was in Memphis when God set this parish church on a journey towards the horizon just a few years ago. Follow me, Jesus says, and I will make you fish for people. Amen.